The Hard Truth with Akosia Konedu, only on Vice at 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank.
Imani boss Franklin Cudjoe is here. Franklin, you've said several times here that it will require 24 billion and over and above, their 5-year spending average to achieve about 75%. I mean, with the current government in their manifesto. Out of this, about 22 billion will have to be borrowed and added to the debt stock, taking debt of GDP into ratio over 100%. Realistically, can this amount be generated from here, I mean internally or on international market over the next 4 years mandate?
Well, I guess a third of that amount, probably a fourth of that amount could be generated here. If we stamped out all official corruption, which costs us in the region of $3 to $4 billion a year. By the way, I don't mean political corruption. I mean corruption across sectors and everywhere. Having said that, I think it is, no country is an island unto itself, but it is instructive that the most important thing for the government to do is to sell this plan in a way, like in a roadshow, like you monetize these plans and sell them to the Ghanaian and say, well, you know what, you can, if I take your tax, this amount will go into it, so give me more tax. But the government has to make that call. Why they need additional taxes in order to prosecute this agenda?
Anti-complaining high tax. If they come to say more taxes,
I'm just trying to be a political economist, a political economic theorist, and I'm just saying to them, this is exactly what they have to do. As to how they package it and market it, that's their call. 2, there must be the foreign component, which obviously is quite important. The foreign direct investment component is also very important. People are happy to be buying your bonds or buying your monetary instruments if indeed they have a belief that you are going to run the macroeconomy properly. Don't forget, Tekwe had issues recently when he needed to float certain bonds. Had the IMF not come in, would have been having a much higher fiscal, if you like, reckless space. So all these things are tied to one, domestic political economy considerations, serious macroeconomic analysis, and indeed an attitude to, an attitude for efficiency and effectiveness. If that attitude is there, and these 3 can be combined and packaged and sold to the Ghanaians, then they would understand that giving off a CD more of the tax would indeed be used to prosecute this agenda. But as to how much of it will be borrowed locally and externally, that call would have to be made by the government. First of all,
but what effect, frankly, will it have? Will this high debt to GDP ratio have on our development?
Obviously, to have some real challenges, especially when the investments. But you see, it will depend on what investments will be made. Because one of the things some economic theorists will tell you is that having debts per se may not be problematic. It's what you use the debt for. Of course, there are other countries that have much more unsustainable debt levels, but the countries are running. The difference there is that they are using their debt.
So is it okay to still borrow?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that there, the discipline with which they attach to the way they use money is higher than what we have here. Don't forget, when the finance minister had to go to the IMF, he said, together with the president, that we are externalizing our fiscal discipline space, which means that there's quite a amount of indiscipline around here. Even though now that the government seems to have passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act or law in Parliament, we probably will hope that in the event that the packaging of these deals have been done and done well to the Ghanaian, and there's a fiscal, if you like, whip master, which can be sure that the monies are used well, then maybe, just maybe, some of these promises may be attained. But it's instructive to know that the NDC needs to promise, not just promise, but show how exactly they'll be fiscally responsible.
On the major issue of the community day schools, which have been promised by the NDC in its 2012 manifesto. Now, there have been different statements on the actual number of schools built and the ones that are on construction. The president, however, says he would be given, if given another opportunity, to add more or actually finish the project. Now, this is one of the many manifesto promises carried over from 2012, or the 2012 manifesto, which were not completed. Can Ghanaians have assurance this time around that if the president is actually given a 4-term a year again, he will actually implement 50% of his promises?
Well, first of all, you recall when this promise was made, we asked, out of what was it being made in terms of costing, in terms of the time frame, and all of that. And I think we were generally roundly condemned because they said we didn't know what we were doing. I think that call will still have to be made by the people of Ghana as to whether they think. I had a number, I think 123 or so of them are in several stages of completion. Well, they have to explain how it came about.
So you said 2012, give me 4 years, I'm going to do this, 200 schools. Why would you transfer it to the following year? What for? Why?
Yeah. So it's the right question we're asking, and I think they have to provide those answers. The answers they've provided, I've heard so far, is that, oh, well, there are some challenges with development. And we said, look, statistically, it was going to be very difficult to construct. It was as if we were going to construct, because by the time they made that promise and by the time they were supposed to deliver, it was as if they were going to construct this almost overnight. Every day they were probably supposed to do one. And we suggested that unless you're using imported fixtures finishing, you probably can mount buildings in about a day or two. These things are doable, by the way. People have mounted higher...
in months, true.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen stuff done in a day. But that's if the NDC had told us that instead of putting brick and mortar, we're actually going to put in these refurbished, if you like, prefabricated beams and prefabricated walls and all of that. But they didn't tell us. And those are the things we require. You see, it's very instructive. As we're having the conversation, a lot is coming out. That when politicians make promises, we've got to find out exactly what do they mean. You see, if the NDC had taken its time to ask itself exactly what buildings were they going to build and exactly what structures they were going to use, would have had a clear understanding of the 200 by the end of 2016. But now they are in a challenge because they themselves hadn't told us exactly what type of structures will be built.
Frankly, if you recall, somewhere on April this year, you indicated that out of 501 promises found in the NDC 2012 manifesto, only 7 was found to have some metric. Now, also, your outfit gave a government grade of 47% in terms of how the party has delivered on its manifesto. Now, this time around, 2016, NDC manifesto is quite huge, 80 pages. With all the tall list of promises, projects and programs. In your opinion, Franklin, per their past record with NDC being able to implement at least 50%, again, given the term 4 years, what would happen?
First of all, let me correct a few. I'm sure I probably made those mistakes when I was here. They actually made 540 promises.
540, not 501. Thank you.
And out of that, only 12 were measurable and then had some time specificity to be concluded. 76 were supposed to be measurable, but the 12 had no time limit. Now, at the time we're doing the midterm assessment, which was July 2015, the NDC had achieved 46, almost 47% of their manifesto promises. Then again, I've got to put a caveat. Because most of the promises were not properly quantified, it was fairly easy to say, I'll increase the doctor-to-patient ratio. If the doctors were 400 and you added 2 or 3, you've achieved it. The reason why we talk about manifestos and their quantification, people don't get it. Now, we are going to complete the final assessment of the NDC, I think on October 4th. After having a validation, we are not going to use the green book because we want to be sure we are doing, no, I'm serious. We're going to be sure we are doing a professional job. So the ministry, department, and agencies will come with their data. We sit with them. We have done our own internal work already, so we will know what score we need to give them. But we need to validate that.
Do they care? I mean, do the government care
I think
if you score me 5% or 2%? I mean, does it really sink into them?
I think they do. I think they do. I suspect they do, because if you look at the reaction from the first one, it tells you that they take it seriously. In fact, we were being told at the time that there are even other things that outside of the manifesto that they were doing. And we said, well, that has implications for the fiscal regime that we operate. But if you have a budget, you can't go doing things outside of the budget. So the question you asked, back to the question you asked again, whether we think by the performance of their 2012 manifesto, they could achieve A, B, C, D in this current manifesto, I would say let's wait for October 4th, when we now see the final assessment of how much they have actually done. Then we can make that call later and say, okay, there are gaps that still exist in this old one. Why were you making new ones anyway? And that will be left for Ghanaians to decide.
We'll be right back.
The Hard Truth with Cudjoe Konedu, only on Vice at 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank. At EcoBank, we see a great future, one that's full of opportunity for those who want to be the best. With over 1,000 branches of a single bank across 33 African countries. It's a future where trade can flourish without boundaries. The future is breathtaking, with enormous cross-border investments helping business and government build new infrastructure, while individuals achieve their ambitions right across Africa. The future is Pan-African, and EcoBank is the Pan-African bank.
You're still watching The Hard Truth, and we are proudly brought to you by Octoglo Ghana Limited and supported by EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Franklin Cudjoe, Imani boss, is still here. Franklin, in October, in April and October 2009, President or Vice President Dramani Mahama, who is now the president, indicated that new region was going to create a new region or carve a new region out of the northern region, and that there was going to be a committee set to look into that. Now, Nana Addo also comes out to say that, well, he's going to create a new region out of the western region if he's voted into power, but was castigated by the NDC only for President Mahama to come back again to actually say he was going to come out with 5 new regions. Now, do you think we are being taken for a ride, I mean seriously, by these politicians, and what would a new region really do to our development? Do we really need it?
First of all, you see, before you create a region, you probably have to ask yourself, have there been any motivating economic circumstances that will warrant that? Not political considerations, not at all. Because we've created regions and created districts only to appeal to politicians. So they pack up parliament, 275, and we have bleeding money. In fact, they are earning 6 times the per capita income everybody earns. Probably 144 times I've forgotten the particular yardstick. And that's criminal. Ask yourself, what has been the corresponding development in the lives of the people over which these districts and constituencies have been created? Just because there's a constitutional provision to be creating constituencies does not warrant you creating ad infinitum. I keep saying, I've been on official trips to Australia and the UK, And they took me through the administrative management of those countries. Australia is a continent far bigger than Ghana. Roughly the same population, by the way. They have 150 members of parliament. They have a higher upper house, but those are just experienced people. Ministries of Agric, Lands and Forestry have been merged in Australia. In the UK, you have DEFRA, Departments for Food, Agriculture and Rural Affairs. Then there's flooding and something else. So these guys who are far richer actually understand that there must be the need to merge stuff. They don't go about creating multiple, what I call, extensions of the political largesse. So you ask yourself, what are the value returns of these regions? Regions averagely are about $1 billion for in terms of growth, in terms of size. Districts are about $150 million. What in God's name is motivating the need to be creating more regions and creating more districts?
So we don't need it. We don't really need.
It comes back to the first question I posed. Has there been any proper piloting? It's not enough to suggest that you put a council together. Actually, suggesting that to me, that you put a council together in order to create this, to make sure these regions are created. For me, it seems to me that you've lost the plot, because you're not giving me the justifications of the districts anyway. I think we need to stop that immediately. I could understand when it was being done for the purpose of gerrymandering, because you want to neutralize your opponent's stronghold. I think that has been the norm. Nothing economic, nothing beneficial to the people. The arguments I've heard are quite frankly annoying. They are not even very annoying. Suggestion is that, oh, the roads here are bad. People have to travel far and wide in order to come to the city to come and get services. Well, put those services there. Create a road. You don't create a new region with new district chief executives, half of whom may be drunks, and then have all these ministers running around in V8 wasting our fuel. That's not the way to use your money. You see, again, if it is your money, nobody spends someone else's money as carefully as he would have spent his money. And that's the tragedy of the commons. All these politicians take us for fools because they want to make it look as if everything is common and it belongs to everybody. We can deal with it the way we want. You don't need any new region. Nobody needs any new region. If you look again at the statistics, it tells you quite frankly. You see, once they create regions, the next thing they'll tell you is that we need to create development authorities. So we are going to have an SADA, we are going to have EDA, Eastern Region, WADA, Western Region, VODA or VADA from my own region. You have all these parallel institutions staffed with political appointees. You end up with a SADA. In the VODA region, I don't know which animals are there, but the guinea fowl flew, right? Right, so all the other ones will fly. I don't believe any politician who says today he wants to create a new district or create a new region. I think it is not economic. It is not necessary. Look, the best things to organize the society. There are 5 things we need to do. These things are basic. Fix the water, fix electricity, fix the roads, fix our schools, fix our health institutions. Everything else is added. Stop telling me you want to create region here, district there, put factories around. What's also when I asked for the details of the factory, somebody told me Nika Nika. You know what Nika Nika is? Corn mill. Now I said we are going back to the days of. I don't think even our ancient forefathers would have thought in that stem.
We'll be right back.
The Hard Truth with Akosia Konedu, only on Viasat 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank. At EcoBank, we see a great future. One that's full of opportunity for those who want to be the best. With over 1,000 branches of a single bank across 33 African countries. It's a future where trade can flourish without boundaries. future is breathtaking, with enormous cross-border investments helping business and government build new infrastructure, while individuals achieve their ambitions right across Africa. The future is Pan-African, and EcoBank is the Pan-African bank.
Welcome back. It's still The Hard Truth. We are proudly brought to you by Octoglo Ghana Limited and supported by your favorite bank, EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, and Imani boss, Franklin Cudjoe is here. Franklin, now that the NDC has, outdoored its manifesto, all eyes are now on the NPP for them to do the same. Now with the NDC, NPP accusing the NDC of stealing their manifesto ideas. Do you think that we should expect anything different from the NPP manifesto?
I laughed. When I keep hearing the stealing thing, one thing comes to mind. Okay, I think the NPP says that, they've stolen our ideas. But then one breath they are saying the ideas are all daft. They can't do them. Presumably, if they've stolen their ideas and they are daft, then they can't achieve them. Would you be able to achieve yours? Because they stole yours. And that's a conundrum, really. Isn't it funny? I'm not saying this in jest. I'm serious, really. Because if all there is on the political grandstanding is to be accusing people of stealing manifesto ideas, as if these ideas are by themselves even pristine, or they are so out of this world that we should be clapping, it's going to cost you and I more money. And that's where I'm concerned. I think sometimes people don't get to see the other part of maybe Franklin Cudjoe. I'm not trying to say I'm larger than life. All that concerns me is evidence and data. Anything else you can talk about, my mother, father, I don't care. And this space will not be ceded to the politician. Not today, not tomorrow. There'll be many more Imanis coming.
So now they've stolen your ideas. Okay, give us the same ideas, but show us a roadmap. Is this what you're saying, basically?
Would you even require a roadmap then? Because if the ideas have been stolen and they are daft, presumably you are presenting the same one. But I can understand the question. Show us a different roadmap. Well, maybe that route will contain humans that are probably more stellar and more knowledgeable than us.
Frankly, people are now showing more political awareness to manifestos.
Which is good.
Yes. Now, do you think that this year's election will be won primarily on manifesto content?
I think these elections will be won primarily based on how people feel about certain important issues. Corruption, the energy situation, agriculture, employment, business, the ease of doing business, and all of these things are very, very important. So if you have them in your manifesto and you can sell them beyond the chuboi and beyond the stealing and the stuff, then good luck to you. In fact, I am just going to be interested in watching the dynamics. As I said, what I'm seeing so far from the data we are gleaning points to very interesting results, which will be very fascinating indeed. And that will be our should I call that our contributions to the political process.
Yeah, finally, you said on the 3rd of October, you would bring out your report. 4th October, you bring the report of the NDC manifesto. What should we expect in that report?
Well, that report will going to be the final assessment of the NDC, which means that we are going to analyze how much they've delivered. It's an output assessment. It's not an impact. Basically, they said they will do ABCD. Let me give you a gist of it. So in the economy, they promised single-digit inflation. They have not achieved it. They won't achieve it on the eve of 31st December 2016. They promised 8% GDP growth rate. They will not achieve that by the end of 2016. They promised that's within the fiscal space that is quite comfortable. I mean, the fiscal space has been obviously misaligned. Those type of analysis is what you'll be getting in the final work. And the work will be done by professional researchers. So however it comes out, and by the way, before it does, we are going to do a validation, not with the Green Book. Because the Green Book may as well contain stuff, but but it's a political booklet. We'll deal with the ministry, department, and agencies, and we'll cross-check from our own internal sources before we give the verdict. And I think that will be our contribution to the political discourse.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Franklin. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure seeing you again.
Franklin Cudjoe, Imani Ghana boss, has been our guest on the show. And I want to find out from you, would the election be won solely on the manifesto content of the various political parties? Well, send me a hit on my Facebook wall. That is Akosia Kunedu on Facebook, and the Hard Truth page also on Facebook. We are proudly brought to you by Octoglo Ghana Limited and supported by your favorite bank, EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. My name is Nana Akosia Kunedu Asante Samuels. Have a good evening. Bye.
The Hard Truth with Akosia Kunedu, only on Vice at 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank.